All right. One needs to be mindful of the coronavirus, the COVID-19 that has become known as it continues its death march across America, that the disease has a master that controls it and understands its use proficiently. And that's something that I want to talk to you about at this present moment. That the disease that first affected the northern states, New York and New Jersey in particular, in what was a actual nightmare of death and sickness and fear as coronavirus affected the northern states. And then, of course, it had coming in on the heels of what had happened in Italy, in Milan, in the northern region of Italy, and to some degree in Germany and some of the other states. And then it dropped on America like a napalm bomb. And then all of a sudden it disappeared, that there were no more deaths and there were no more sicknesses or in the northern area. Then came in the intramural time or intermission time, came the death of George Floyd. Now, there was a public murder, a public lynching of George Floyd. I think we'll all agree on that. And out of that rolls the new epidemic of the coronavirus. Oh, you said the Black Lives Matter. No, listen to me. I'm going to let you have your say in just a moment. Out of the death of George Floyd came together the new conspiracy or the new concoction, if you will, to bring the coronavirus into territory that it had not been in previously, in a way much more grievous than it had been in the New York, New England area. And that is the death of George Floyd and coming together of hundreds of thousands of young people, both Japheth and Hamite and Shemite alike, all within their youth. And the lies that were told to get this virus down into the southern states was that young people were immune. And I believe, I don't have the data to prove it, and I'll at least present you with that, but I believe that the deaths of the young people in their teens up to their early 30s was not diagnosed here in the New York region as coronavirus, while it would have given some but what was promoted then by several of the institutions at the time, that young people were immune. Now, when the young people heard that they were immune to it, that this was an old people's disease, they flooded the streets of America. They flooded the streets of Minneapolis. They flooded the streets of St. Paul. They flooded the streets of Los Angeles. They flooded the streets of Atlanta. They flooded the streets of New York. They flooded the streets of America. In every major city, they flooded the streets because had the Center for Disease Control and other infectious disease institutions had stated clearly that this is an equal age killer virus, that young people would be just as susceptible, they would have thought twice before going out into march with the George Floyd event and the defund the police event. So they went out there as carriers. I mean, they were like messengers, carrier pigeons, mingling one among another, stirring up the disease. Now, if you follow the news and you believe the accounts of what happened in Wuhan or Hong Kong or in Taiwan or in some of the other nations, or even in South Korea, where only 238 people died in a nation of nearly 40 million people, that the reason why they were able to stop the deaths is because they shut down completely movement of all people, including young people. Toddlers were shut down in South Korea, in Wuhan, China, in Taiwan, and in Hong Kong, and the deaths were minuscule. But here's the plan. Here's what the devil did. He was able to promote that it only affects old people. And all you heard about in New York were old people dying because they had diabetes or they had hypertension or they had some other kind of underlying, and they were all dying in their 70s and their 80s, but those in their 20s and their 30s were immune. That was information that was held from the public. And I think there needs to be an investigation. Someone needs to open an investigation into the medical records, especially here in the New York, New Jersey area, and also in the Washington State and Oregon area, about the deaths, and autopsies ought to be performed on the young people that died, because a lot of young people died, but they were given the idea that they were immune, that they had a special protection, and they took to the streets with the George Floyd event. I won't tell you about George Floyd and how that event came to. We all saw it. There's a history behind that one as well. But what we need to understand is that it brought literally millions of young carriers of coronavirus out into the streets. Now here's what you need to do. And they spread out all across America. They were down in Dallas, down in Mobile, down in Jacksonville, down in Miami. And then many of them didn't even live in that region. And they went back home. But the virus is there. And now you're looking at a spread of coronavirus that was spread not by the virus itself, but by the carriers that marched in the George Floyd defund police marches. Is how the virus got to Texas, how it got to Arizona, how it got to Oklahoma, how it got to Georgia, how it got to North Carolina, how it got to Miami, how it got to Alabama, how it got there. You also will remember, and this data information need to be opened up as well, that the coronavirus got to Louisiana, New Orleans in particular, just New Orleans, right after Mardi Gras. Why? Because young people came from the north, south, east, and west into New Orleans. And New Orleans became a hot spot of the coronavirus, and they started dying like flies there in New Orleans. Why? Because the carriers came from other regions, and then once the carriers retreated, and about 6 to 7 weeks to a month after, the dying began to die out. But all around Louisiana, in Alabama, and in Florida, and in Georgia, and in South Carolina, and in Texas, and Oklahoma, and Arizona, and in New Mexico, but they don't count the Indians. They don't count. And in California, the death charts and the spreading of the coronavirus is off the charts. Brought there not by the indigenous people that live in Texas or that live in Florida or that live in Arizona, but by the George Floyd, if you will, defund the police marches. And they, for 7 solid weeks, they spread that virus over the southern states. And that's, my friend, that's what took place. That's what happened. And you're going to see a continual march of death across the southern states in order for those that understood this process in the institution that should have given us information about the virus. The other thing I think is that we now know that the marches were used not just to spread the propaganda of defund the police, not just to spread the propaganda of tearing down statues in Richmond and other places across the island. It was used for that. It was a master plan that accomplished so many ill-gotten political goals through the death of George Floyd. It has to be historic in the goals that were accomplished. And they were all ill-gotten, all Satan-inspired. And now the coronavirus is in the South, and it was brought there by young northern carpetbaggers that went down to Atlanta to march. That's how it got there. But I think we also need to understand that, and you need to be very mindful, I see sports as the true religion of America. And that's why I'm not an athlete, or I don't get involved in the the sports ideal. I see sports as the religion, because you know what can happen in sports? That black and white people, though they may have differences about other items politically, they'll sit in a basketball coliseum or football stadium, and they will be the tightest of friends if it's around sports, not around Jesus, not around the Bible, not around the Word of God, but around sports, football. Oh man, you want to see black folk and white folk get together and harmonize like the five blind boys of Mississippi. Get a ball. Give a black boy a ball and a white boy to catch it. And we got it is the religion of America. And these coliseums are cathedrals and churches. Now here, when you open up the basketball devils and the football fools to start playing ball again, the virus is going to have a third life. It's going to live again in the coliseums and in the cathedrals of America's religion, which is sports. It's going to live again, my friend. Oh, yes. There's no doubt about that. And so we need to be mindful of that. So I've said that you need to boycott. You need to boycott these sports events, not just to be able to defund Black Lives Matter, but you need to boycott them, that you might be able to stop the continual spread. Because you'll get guys who are playing for the Houston Rockets or playing for the Seattle, whoever, the Supersonics or whoever they might be, and they'll travel down into Texas with their diseases, sleep with some of the girls down there after the game, and to go to some of the restaurants, hang out with some of the people there in the stadium, and you got again a third wave of the coronavirus. Not only should you boycott all these sports in these cathedrals and coliseums of religion for the purpose of preserving your life, first for the purpose of being able to defund, because that's where these black people, they Hamites, but they'll get their money from these mega sports figures who get these extraordinary contracts and then get on television and talk about it. Someone wrote me a question the other day about my information about Black Lives Matter, because I've been following the money. They are billionaires. They have amassed $1 billion just from the marches. And they have been given billionaire endowment status in offshore accounts. And someone asked me if I would tell them how I got that information. You got to be kidding. You think I'm going to give you? I don't even know who you are. You could be a member of Black Lives Matter yourself, trying to find out how I got the information, and then you want to go after my sources. No, I ain't giving that up. But they do have offshore accounts. They are billionaires. And not just that, but they got the liberal media in their back pocket. They can get all the ad time. If you look at the amount of time that's going to be spent on the presidential election, or even look at the amount of time that Tribulation Trump is given as the president, whether he travels to Texas or travels to Alaska or wherever, you will know that the cameras follow him. Why? Because he's the president of the United States of America, so he's getting all this time. But if you look at the data, and some of y'all can get that information, of how much time the liberal and the conservative media, including the radio and television and newspaper, combined cover Tribulation Trump, you'll discover that Black Lives Matter gets more coverage than does the President of the United States of America. We're in for one over here, brother. I can tell you something. We're in for one. And so we need to be mindful. Boycott sports. Boycott McDonald's. Boycott all black businesses. Boycott all black businesses. Someone wrote to me the other day and said, Pastor, I hear you, and I hate Black Lives Matter, and I hear what you're saying. I know how evil they are, but Pastor, I got a lot of black friends, and I can't boycott the places that they work, praying that they'll go out of business or boycott their individual business. I just can't. They're my friend. Let me tell you something. I've been black all my life. That's right. And ain't no, you can't, you may be white, but you don't know about you don't know black. I live in Harlem. You have got to be a blackologist. You got to be a blackologist to live in Harlem and survive in Harlem. So you can make it in New York. You can make it anywhere. You got to be a blackologist to survive in Harlem. That's right. Don't get shot, cut, nor robbed. You got to be a blackologist. So I know something about being black. They'll turn on you. They may be your friends now, but let the black flag be raised and they will turn on you like you slapped their mama. Oh, you can call them your friends now. I understand. No, I understand that. I understand. But they'll turn on you. I'm going to tell you something. That it's just in their nature. They'll take everything you got. They'll take every dime you give them. They'll take every meal you serve them. They'll take anything. They'll take everything you got. But when you start telling them the truth and tell them to take responsibility, they'll turn on you. That's right. And it won't be no light turn. They will turn on you. Jesus said you have to be very careful about who you give to. Don't give your pearls to swine, because they will turn, they will gobble them up and then turn again and rend you. So just in case you think that somehow that I'm prejudiced or that I'm a hater, no, Jesus said that they'll turn on you. Jesus said that these pigs will turn on you. These black pigs, by the way, these Poland Chinas, y'all country boys. If you're not a country boy, you don't know that about that. No, So you got to boycott. Boycott every place they work. Boycott McDonald's, boycott Burger King, wherever they work, wherever they get their money from. Boycott their sports, boycott their entertainment. Boycott! Not just for the fact of the dethroning their economy, but also that you might be able to protect yourselves from them, and also boycott the liberal media. America, and I'm through with y'all today, is the cornerstone of humanity and economically, spiritually, and otherwise. And you will notice that this virus is weeding out and spreading through America like you will not believe. And it's time for America to not only call for everybody to wear a mask, but it's time to call for a national prayer and 40 days of fasting and prayer to stop the coronavirus, if that's something that you would care to do. The other thing is that I think that to all parents, if your children, both in the North and South, both Democrat and conservative, liberal and otherwise, gay or straight, if your children marched in the George Floyd defund police march at age 18 to 30 or 40 or so, don't let them around grandma and grandpa. They're going to kill grandma. They're going to kill grandma because they got that virus in them. And some of them are asymptomatic, as you very well know. Don't let them around your young children, those under the age of 14. You say, well, you marched in the George Floyd march. You're my son, but you can't come to my house. How come, Daddy? Did you know that you were around all these people with this disease out there in the street? Y'all out there hobnobbing together, robbing together, breathing on one another? I'm sorry. You got to go through a 14-day quarantine before I let you in the house around grandma and grandpa. You can't come to Thanksgiving dinner. You can't come to Sunday dinner. In fact, you can't come to church. Well, Daddy, I don't have it. We don't know that. What we do know, if you do have it, and you come around grandpa, you're going to kill him. And he shouldn't die because you're out there marching for George Floyd. He shouldn't die because of George Floyd. No. I'm sorry, son. I'm sorry, daughter. We're going to break your plate. So I thought it would be important to say that to you today. I want you to know that I am James David Manning. I'm the Lord's servant. I said, I'm the Lord's servant. This is a bit of a news blog we do, looking at spiritual wickedness in high places for the most part, making some observations about it and giving people a biblical foundation to the way of interpreting, rather than have Sean Hannity or Laura Ingraham or Janine Pirro or Anderson Cooper or Rachel Maddow or Don Lemon Rush Limbaugh interpret what's going on in the world. You come to me and I'll tell you based on what the Word of God says. They'll just give you their worldly, sinful view. But the Manning Report will tell you what God has said, whether to say yea or nay, whether to go or to stay. You'll be led by the word of Almighty God. Come to the Manning Report on a daily basis to interpret the spiritual wickedness in high places, because there's plenty of it that's going on. And so I'm the Lord's servant, James David Righteous Rebel Manning, and I'm here to serve you with news and information.